It's the Brad and John Show.
It is the Brad and John Show. As I try to clear my voice, today is the 24th of October. It is a Friday, and this is the C Block, the Charlie Block. Okay, first off, John, info dude Mike Otten sent me something interesting, and I've heard about this before. Are you familiar with what they call the Kessler Syndrome? Have you ever heard of this before?
No, what's that?
The Kessler Syndrome, or the Kessler theory, is a theory that what's going to happen is there's going to be one or two objects in space orbiting around the United States. Let's say it's a piece of space junk that hits a satellite, and that satellite disintegrates and creates more space junk, and then that space junk impacts 3 or 4 other satellites, and those satellites disintegrate, and more space junk comes flying around, and ultimately everything in outer space around in Earth's orbit in outer space is destroyed, and we have no more satellites anymore. You never heard that before then?
No, I haven't. That's fascinating.
It's called the Kessler Syndrome. You can look it up, Kessler, Kessler Syndrome on Wikipedia. The reason I know about it is from time to time, I listen to George Norrie late at night on 97.1, and this is a big topic with the paranormal people and the whole bit. Okay.
Hey, speaking of, Brad, let me interrupt real quick, because you believe that a rising tide lifts all boats. Last night, the St. Louis Young Republicans had an event in coordination and collaboration with the folks at 97.1 FM to celebrate I believe it was the 25-year anniversary or was it 20-year anniversary of 97.1 FM. Did you see that, Brad?
25. I listened to part of the broadcast. It was very interesting. A lot of history in that
station.
Station.
That's awesome. So first of all, St. Louis YRs are awesome. Frank Catanzaro. He has a whole team there, a bunch of dedicated young Republicans. And how great is it that we had 25 years ago a station start that was just dedicated to conservative talk. And they've managed to keep it up, Brad, for 25 years.
Well, the interesting part of that is, John, that's not exactly how it started. Matter of fact,
how did it start, Brad?
The call letters for 97.1 are KFTK. And F and TK was to stand for female talk. And they decided and it was funny because I heard John Beck talk about this. They had him back on the air yesterday. And this is a perfect example of when someone says, hey, we've done the research and we found a great idea. Research came back that women were being underserved in talk radio. And typically talk stations today, any of the talk stations are like 80 to 95% men. And matter of fact, if you get into like sports talk, like ESPN 101, I mean, it's like 98% men. There's, small segment of women population. So they felt that the woman talk audience was being underserved. So they put the station on as a female talk station. And they had Dr. Tony Grant and Susan Forward. I think they were running Loveline. They were running all these, they had, Clark Howard on there. If you remember Clark, I used to run Clark Howard on the old days on our AM station, which is now crap. And Clark Howard was huge among women because he sort of sounded, if you remember, he had this sing-songy voice. I'm Clark Howard. And he was telling you how to save 3 cents by, using your trash bags 42 times by coating them with olive oil or something like that. That was Clark Howard, okay? And it was a dismal failure. Now, the funny part of the story is, and I will tell this because Dave Glover talked about it yesterday, at the time, Dave Glover was an attorney. And his law.
And then what happened, Brad? Was he a guest? And then what happened? By the way, if folks want to hear this whole thing, go to February 12th, 2025. Brad talks about the demise of female talk radio, why it didn't work. Dave Glover is an advertiser and then getting his own show. Brad, what happened when Dave came in to be a guest on a show?
Well, he didn't come in to be a guest. What happened was Dave
bought advertising.
Dave was an advertiser on the station, and his sales rep, who he ultimately married, which is interesting, he fell in love with his sales rep, he ran up an $8,000 bill, and he couldn't pay it. So they're trying to work out a payment plan with him at the time, 97.1. This is an honest God true story. He told it again yesterday. And I know people that know him real well, and they've said, yes, that's exactly how it what happened. So the station essentially said, dude, we got to get some money out of you. So the ratings had tanked for this female talk thing and just had gone nowhere. So they said to Dave, okay, Dave, we'll make you a deal. You come in the afternoon and you do a show, and we'll knock $100 off your bill for every show you do. Because
had Dave Glover just gotten fired at one of the big silk stocking law firms?
No.
To the point where he even talks about the fact that Mayor Slay at one point in time,
right,
in one of the big law offices downtown, fired Dave Glover. This is from our transcript.
Yeah, he got fired from a couple different law firms, and he started his own law firm. And he talked about how he didn't have any clients. He was losing money. And he married Maureen, according to your original story. Right. He married Maureen. Mo, as he called her. And the interesting part of it was he was the only local programming on 97.1. And then they started doing the morning show. And you know who the first morning talk show host was?
I have no idea, Brad. Is it in our transcript from that original show?
Now you're making fun of me. Charles Jaco.
No way.
Yes, Charles Jaco. And at one point in time, they had Charles Jaco teamed up with Smash. Can you imagine that combination?
That's quite Asher Bid Ruby and
Yeah.
Charles Jaco.
Right. So, but the interesting part of this was, and this is the interesting thing with how the conservative, network, the conservative, media landscape sort of changed. There's another interesting thing is that not too long, they launched the station in 2000. At the time, there were no national political talk shows except for Rush Limbaugh and conservative. That was the only one. That was pretty much it. And in the years following 2000, matter of fact, there's an interesting part of this little story that, do you know what day that Sean Hannity launched his first day of his national talk show? Take a guess. Do you know this story?
Let me guess. September 11th, 2001.
September 10th. He launched his
the
talk
day before.
the day before 9/11, and obviously his show went nowhere for a while because everybody, preempted all the programming. Well, anyway, they talked about the fact that in the early 2000s, you had Laura Ingraham come along, you had Sean Hannity come along, you had Bill, what's his name? Let's take it live.
Bill O'Reilly.
Bill O'Reilly come along. You had Dr. Michael Savage, all these people come along, and ultimately, and at one point in time, John Beck told the story that at one point in time, the national program director that ran all the different formats for Emmis, which was the owner of the station out of Indianapolis, called up John and says, John, we got to pull the plug on this 97.1. Not only do we not have any ratings, we're losing money on the station, and we don't want to lose money on 97.1. And they were going to put it back into a music format, which had been previously. And John says, no, I think there's some groundswell. He says, I think this is going to go and take off. And Glover talked about the fact that he started with 000 ratings when he started in 2000.
Jeff Allen sat him down, didn't he, Brad?
Yes, and by the year 2003, he was number one in afternoon. So that's the Dave Glover story. Okay, I'm going to read something, and I hope I don't tick anybody off, but I'm going to read something which I find interesting, okay? Hi, Brad. This is Ben Brown. I didn't have an ad agency, but I had a consulting firm called Victory Enterprises. Were you saying that you asked me about personally, or you reached out to someone with the campaign? I'm a fan of the show. Did you hear that, John? He says, I'm a fan of the show, so I was confused when I heard that. I don't have any recollection of being approached about it. Was a pretty hectic time, though. The other day, when you were giving all the money that all the different campaigns had, and we mentioned Ben Brown, and I said, I've never gotten a penny from any of those people, from Ben Brown
and what
or
else
anything like that.
And I asked you directly, I said, did you reach out to Nick Schroer and Ben Brown, or did you send them some sort of junk mail? And you claimed that you spoke to both of them directly.
No, here's what I wrote back to Ben. This is what I said. We rarely get any political buys as Nielsen's had changed the way they do ratings. We don't subscribe to Nielsen. It used to be that even though a station didn't subscribe to Nielsen, we still had ratings, which the agencies did ascribe to or were able to see. Nielsen changed that, and now if we don't subscribe, we have zero ratings.
Wait, that was your response to Ben?
Well, I told him some other stuff as well. I said,
"Oh, okay," because like sending him a wall of text when he sends you a nice, kind, direct message. I would have admonished you for that, but go ahead.
No, him and I went back and forth.
So you did say on the air that you spoke directly to Ben, though, right?
Well, I thought I did, and I do.
So this goes. Okay, I'm not gonna. This is not a week to correct you, Brad.
I do believe
this is why when I press you on things and I say, did you speak to this person or did you just send them junk mail? and then you claim that you speak to them, you should be pretty sure that you actually spoke to them before you claim on the air that you spoke to them.
Here's my recollection. I did speak with Victory, and I believe, I'm almost positive, I did speak with Ben directly, and he said, talk to my agency, which is what most of these guys will tell you. And probably the story that maybe I should or should not tell is that last year, I guess it was June or July, when they had the big debate out at one of the Parkway schools out there. You remember that, when it was the governor's debate, which Keogh didn't show up for. So it was Bill Eigel, it was Jay Nixon, and some dude from Joplin who nobody knew who he was.
Yeah, not Jay Nixon, but go ahead.
Right. No, Jay Ashcroft.
Jay
Ashcroft. Okay. I was out there, and a guy came up to me, introduced himself to me, and his name was Chris Cook. You know who Chris Cook is, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, yeah, he's like the head honcho for Ann Wagner, right? Okay.
Correct, yeah.
Very complimentary, says he listens to the show, enjoys you, and well, he says he enjoys you, doesn't necessarily enjoy me, but he enjoys the show, and he volunteered, and I'll tell the story because this is how tough it is to try to get political money as being a small station like myself. He said, I'm going to buy some advertising on your station. I didn't ask him. He volunteered that. I said, wow, that would be great. And he says, I'll make the buy. He says, we're not going to do anything for the primary. He says, but we'll do some stuff for the general. I go, cool. So that would typically be, they would start buying some ads like in September, maybe.
And this is the first time you've told me this story. So okay, thank you for that.
You've never heard this before?
You've literally, no, you don't, Brad, you're a very poor communicator. I've never heard you tell a story about Chris Cook mentioning buying radio ads. But go ahead.
He said he was going to buy ads in the station. And I thanked him. We had a nice conversation. He was very complimentary of you and what we do in the station.
Let's cut to the chase.
So time goes by. I get no buy. It's about, 2 weeks before the election. So I'm thinking to myself, you know what? The guy seemed like really nice. Was he just jerking me around? So I called him up, and I said, hey, Chris, remember me? Oh, yeah, Brad, I remember you. I said, remember we met, oh, yeah. I said, you said you're going to buy some advertising. And he says, well, didn't you get the order? I go, no. And he says, what? You didn't get the order? I go, no, I didn't get the order. And he says, hold on a minute. He says, let me call you right back. So 20 minutes later, he calls me back. He sent the order to his advertising agency, and they deleted us. They cut us out, because why? We don't have any ratings. We're not.
But hold on, Brad. So if I recall correctly, Ann Wagner had ads on your station, or stations plural, last fall before the general, right?
He told them, he said to them, buy these stations. And he forced their hand, and we got a late buy. It only lasted by about 2 weeks or so. You're correct.
Okay, but hold on. So Chris followed through with exactly what he said he was going to do.
He did.
Which is, I would say, the kind of guy that Chris is.
But
right?
I'm saying the reason, and see, I'm not saying.
Who is the ad buyer then?
I'm not saying anything bad about Chris. I'm saying this is the problem we face as being a small independent station, that we don't get those buys. He instructed his agency to buy us, told us. He had it in the media plan, and the agency cut us out.
So that's their decision, right? You, as a campaign, you pay media buyers to make good decisions, and you probably trust their intuition to a level. Brad, and this had something to do with Ben Brown. So first of all, thanks to Ben Brown for reaching out to Brad. First of all, Ben, thank you for listening. We appreciate that. But also, I think it's great that Ben hears you tell a story and wants to set the record straight, which seems like this is what he did, right?
And the bottom line of this is, I did contact Victory back in last year, and they had other candidates. They're out of Iowa. If you know who Victory is, they're big political ad house, and they're out of Iowa, and they had a bunch of clients in the area. I contacted them. I got zero nada from them. And once again, I'm about 85 to 90% sure that I did talk to Ben directly, because he actually says, I don't have any recollection of being approached about it. but it was pretty hectic time
but
back
Ben,
then.
would you trust your memory or Ben's memory? I would trust Ben's memory better than your memory.
John, I make these calls to these people, and what do
Who do you know? Who have you talked to at Victory, or did you send them a spam email?
Oh no! I see. Here's the interesting thing. I've got a long history with Victory because when Brian Nieves was running for state rep,
which is 15 years ago.
Well, every single election cycle, he would come into the station, literally come into the station, and say, "Hey, Victory's going to contact you, and they're going to buy ads," and they did every single campaign.
They have limited budget, and they look at things like ratings and numbers. And if you sell them a story of, well, see, here's a historical dissertation on Nielsen. If I work for Victory, I'm going to say, thanks, Gramps. Thanks, Unc. Okay, we're going to go with somebody that can show us something.
Look, John, I hear what you're saying. And you know what? To a certain extent, you know what my attitude about political advertising is? As far as I'm concerned right now, I could give a poop less. And I know you're going to say, well, that's not right. You give a poop Brad? More or whatever. It's to the point where, and even to the point where the conversation went on further, and even to the point where I had somebody, I won't say who it is because I won't give this away. I had somebody who also listened to the show when we talked about this, and they went through the list. Oh, so no, you got no money from Eigel? No, zero. You got no money from Ricky Schroeder? No, zero. You got no money from Mr. Left Lane, 120 mile an hour law? No, zero. And they're going like, how can that be? And I go, don't ask me, ask them.
So what's the remedy for that, Brad?
Screw them.
Okay. So the remedy isn't what can we do as a station to show value to candidates?
John.
And instead of sending spam emails or leaving voicemails for Bill Eigel, what can we do to show that we bring value to an advertiser?
Nothing.
That's not the answer. The attitude is going to be, according to you, screw it.
Nothing. Because see, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you, whatever the hell it goes. The problem with it is it's to the point where, and this is my pitch all the time. I mean, no disrespect to 97.1. 97.1 is a great radio station, okay? But yet, how many times have I pitched Jane Pushkar on our station. She looked at me like, who are you? We're buying 97.1. Here's the problem with 97.1. Talk radio is, by its nature, we talked about this 5 minutes ago, 80 to 95% female.
And what did Jane Pushkar say about women in Westplex 107?
But the problem with this is they treat women like they don't exist. They don't.
And Brad, when they come to you and say, hey, Westplex 107.1, for folks who don't know, is a fantastic music radio station. When they say, Brad, can you show us your demographics? Can you show them demographics? Or can you just say, no, we play a lot of Billie Eilish. Advertise with us?
John, let me throw this back at you. And matter of fact, I got to get out here early today, but and because of the fact,
I don't have yard sign data. I can't show how campaigns spend on yard signs and the return they have on that.
Right. Tell me. But
I can tell you that other radio stations can provide demographics because they take professionalism seriously and they look at it from the perspective of an advertiser. They look at it from the perspective of Ben Brown and Victory Enterprises, and not, we made a wacky AI video. Did you see it?
John, if you want to send Nielsen a $25,000 check so we get ratings.
Brad.
Well, that's the problem. The problem is that it's money. I would be better off spending $25,000 for a new transmitter than paying Nielsen, because the problem is rarely do I ever sell, and this is the name of the game with stations like myself. We don't sell advertising by ratings. And what's interesting about this is, it's funny you should bring this up, because John Beck brought this up yesterday, that traditionally, and it's very complicated, I won't get to the complicating aspect of this, talk stations are negatively impacted by the new Nielsen rating system with their PPM thing, because the PPM is optimized for music stations. So even if you have the number one talk station in the entire St. Louis area, it will not get the ratings because of the fact that the algorithm is designed to listen for people listening to music radio, because most of the stations on FM are music stations, and the way the algorithm works for the system, that what they call the PPM system, it does not work for talk stations. So
yeah, that's exactly right. And thank you to Ben Brown for reaching out to Brad. Thank you, Ben, for contacting Brad directly and for setting the record straight. Brad's memory is sometimes a little bit fuzzy, And when folks can do some things to
John,
help Brad's memory, I appreciate it.
I know I talked to him because
I bet you did, Brad.
Because the victory thing, I do remember this.
Yeah,
and to the point where I can tell you, I can tell you a story, and not this election cycle, but 2 cycles ago, which would be 2000. Okay, I put everything on online for all ads for both Westplex and this station for $1 a holler. Okay. I had an agency call me up and beat me up over $1. The guy says to me, well, we're not going to pay $1 because you don't have any ratings. We'll pay you 50 cents. And I go F yourself. And I hung up the phone.
Well, I'm sorry you went through that, Brad.
Yeah.
And you are going to be late for your appointment if we don't go.
No, it's my meeting. But see, now here's the chance. It's 8:06 right now. We went way late. I can go in and chop up the show real quick and be late for my meeting, or I can come back and do the show later.
Yeah, you can be late for your meeting. You chose to go 6 minutes over on a Nielsen algorithm rant, and you can actually execute on what you should do and post the show and then be late to your meeting.
Bye, John.
See you, Brad.